John Alcoholic. Not Jeff. Those of you that came to see Jeff, I apologize now. See if I can find what I was looking up last night. I can't. But last night I was thinking about these workshops and analyzing them, which is always, a great thing to do. And I said, I don't know, workshop might be a little generous title for what we've done. So I Googled it, workshop, and the noun version was a building or space where something is produced, and I was like, oh, no, or repaired. And I thought, well, maybe there's been some repair this weekend. And the verb version of it was, which Sheldon qualified us for, was a exuberant, overexcited version, explanation of something. Sheldon got us home. We met the mark. For those of you who, maybe didn't make Friday or Saturday, I'm sorry you missed the best part. This is really just going to... in those workshops I talked about, how my wife and I had just moved here and how, I'd had some difficulty, really getting plugged in, and I'm a slow learner. The topic of this workshop, what is it again? The struggle is real. That's the amount of prep we did. I've asked him like 3 times, what's the topic? And I knew it had something to do with mistakes because I'm really good at those. But I'm such a slow learner, and I'm 50. I'm 33 years sober, thanks to the kindness of strangers. And I'm embarrassed to say this out loud, but I finally feel like I'm almost getting it, right? Like and if you're 33 days here, don't let that scare you. You don't have to wait 30 years to learn some things. But in terms of being a slow learner, we moved here and we resigned our king and queenship of Maryland and decided to live here in exile. And we talked so much about self yesterday and the insatiableness of that. I don't know if that's a word, but I can't get enough of self. And but we moved here, and I thought I'd give it a try because the self is so easy, and it's temporarily it works, And as we drift off this, we all have known people with 5 years or 10 years or 25 years that slowly drift off this path, and I think that usually always begins with some type of self, and so we get here and we're a couple of days in, and I worked all day long. It was like at least an hour and a half on Zoom in my underwear, and I said, "Babe, what are you doing tonight?" And she said, "Oh, I'm going to meet." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm going fishing." Self is the answer, and so next day, I said, "Babe, what are you doing tonight?" She said, "Oh, I met 6 new girls. We're going to go read the big book before the meeting." I'm like, "What? Can't you just rest on your laurels a little bit, And the next day, I'm like, "I'm going fishing tonight, babe. What are you doing?" And she said, I'm going to the prison, or I'm going to jail. I'm like, "Oh my!" I told you got the wrong Edmonds up here, and I went fishing. But that's been the battle for me. The 2 things that will take me out of here more than anything else is self and fear. When we get asked to run our mouths in Alcoholics Anonymous, in any format, right? Whether it's just sharing for 15 minutes at a 12-person meeting, we often introduce it as, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, and that's obviously very important. And I used to think that what happened was like the part of our story where the stuff hit the fan. What got us to surrender and what got us here. And I'm a slow learner. The what happened is how the Spirit awakened. And if you're sitting here, you've figured out that we are not experts on Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope we've been able to convey some, and we'll continue to do the rest of the hour, of how my spirit has become a little bit more awake than it was last week, last month, last year. One of my favorite parts of the big book is, we know just a little. And whether you're 3 days or 333 years in here, I hope you know just a little, because when I start a sentence with "I know," I'm in big trouble. We all sponsor those guys, right? They call you and they vomit this terrible thing that's going on in their life. And you're like, well, you start talking like, well, I know. I'm like, oh, let's talk later. Right, 'cause I'm just not listening. But I really think our description, our what we're called to do, I think is on the top of page 29. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. Says, each man in his own way in the personal stories describes how he established his relationship with God. And we talked about it yesterday, right? Like, that is the number one thing in my life. And why don't I act like that more of the day? It's just, and the answer for me is self. It's just so attractive, right? Like, and not that we should, he knows better. And so it's okay. I definitely know I'm not getting invited back last night. When Steve gave that announcement about, not to invite the common folk to sit at these tables, that was us. Sit wherever you want, for God's sake. If somebody had told me I couldn't sit in this chair, but I got to sit in this chair, my very first AA meeting, man, had been the last of me. Because I knew y'all didn't like me, and that would have been enough. But I understand what he's saying. It's the committee's important. Let's save their seats. Last row. So, how has this relationship with God been established for me? And that's all I got. And it's a lot of mistakes, a lot of failure, a lot of surrender, and as much work as I had to do to overcome it. No more. Like, no extra work. You know what I mean? Just enough to keep from dying for a long time. But what happens, and Sheldon referenced what he said, the great author, and he was talking about Sam Shoemaker's I Stand by the Door. I was going to read it, but we don't have time for that. And in that he says, once you've tasted God, nothing but God will do. And that's our job as sponsors or friends or just members of Alcoholics Anonymous is try to hold that new guy's hand long enough to give him a taste. Sponsorship is monkey see, monkey do stuff in here, right? I mean, that's what we do. And I used to think, it was about sharing some pearls of wisdom and being some smart person, and that's not what sponsorship is about for me today. And I've been shown that, right? Like, I haven't been taught anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. Anything that I have has been shown to me. My sponsor and the men that have saved my life were never like, go do these 7 things and come back and report. They're, the deal. They were like, get in the car. And, I forget that my job is to pull my car up to a guy and get in. I was, where did that 15 minutes go? I was early in sobriety, and I was dying of untreated alcoholism. My naval career was over, and I came home. And it was awful, because it was one more failure for John. Coming home a loser. And we say in meetings, is anybody at the very first meeting? Well, my first sponsor used to say, is anybody at their last meeting? Because a lot of us are at our last meetings. Maybe not in here. I know this is the well crowd. But this particular, I had about 20 months of sobriety or something, and my sobriety was meeting based, as Katie talked about, right? Like if the meeting was good, I was in just enough spiritual condition to make it through the day, make it till midnight. Hold on tight. And I don't hold on tight very long. I can only tread water for a little bit. But I was dying, and I remember walking into this meeting. My little hoopty was blown up, and I think Mom dropped me off. Which is just so, at 19 years old, so demasculating. Can you drop me on the corner? My soulmate may be in here. And, hey, honey, you want to go out? Oh, we got to take your car, though. And I literally, I'm a deal maker. And I walked in that meeting. I can remember walking down those steps, and I was like, God, you got to do something. Like, I need a little miracle 7-pound golden fleece baby Jesus. Like, this is it. I'm on my way out. And, there was this group of people in our group in that meeting that had that glow that you guys have. And I so wanted it. But, I was so scared and knew that, I wasn't worthy of it. And, I'd kind of gotten friendly with them, and so after every meeting, they would say they'd all get together and yuck it up and laugh and cry and hug and stuff, and I just couldn't do any of that. I could not do that. And they all went to Bob's Big Boy or Denny's afterwards. That was the height of their debate after the meeting, and I really wanted to go. And so I got near them after the meeting, and I sent them some telepathic messages to invite me. A couple of them, and they weren't smart enough to figure it out. And so I pretended to do some service. I picked up a couple of ashtrays near them, straightened up some chairs, made sure they saw it. Still no invite. And I said, F it, I'm out of here. This is all crap. And I kind of stormed out of the meeting. I didn't slam the door enough to not be invited back, but I slammed the door enough so they would notice that I left. Kind of do when you break up with the girl that you don't really want to break up with. And I'm walking home, which was a really bad idea because Mama's was about 7 miles. And I was approaching the corner where if I was really pot committed to walking home, it was a left. And everybody else went right out of this meeting to the main road. And so as I approached it, a couple hundred yards away, I strategically slowed down a little bit to give everybody a second chance as they passed. And lo and behold, Charles pulled up and rolled down the window. He had this little 2-door car, and Charles, a big boy, and Rick was in the front seat with him, another really big guy. And, hey, you want to go to Bob's Big Boy with us? Well, now I'm kind of pissed. So a dying man with any sense would say, yes, thank you. But I couldn't say it. But my life was on the line. I knew the answer was not no. And I'm pretty quick on my feet, and the first thing I could think of was, I said, well, I don't have any money. And he said, well, seeing that you're walking, your financial status really wasn't in question. And I don't know that he said, get in the car, dummy. But his eyes did. And Charles wasn't a touchy-feely, lovey guy, but with all, it just came out of him. I could just look at me dead in the eyes. And for some reason I didn't look at my feet for that moment, And so Rick, I said, all right. I got in the car. And that's what our job is, one of my favorite spiritual authors talks about our job is to love the guy on the margins, and when I walk in the home group, my tendency is to, yuck it up with the 5 guys that I sponsor, talk about where we're going to be fishing, cornhole or golf or the latest football game, and I forget the guy that's in the back, in the corner, sitting by the coffee pot, that just got out of jail, that's got "screw you" tattooed on his eyelids, that's doing this. Here's my slip. Can you sign my slip? And that's what we're called to do. And but as Bill talks about, we can't transmit something we haven't gotten, and it took me a long time to get something to transmit. And what it took for me was a complete second surrender. And I wanted to talk about kind of 2 of the larger mistakes in my recovery and the journey in them, but we're only going to get to one. I was about, as I told you, I got here young, and the mission when I got here was to conquer the universe, and stay sober. I get it. I'm all in. I know I can't drink. I know I can't use the fun stuff. I'm here. But I need to make $75,000 a year. And my problem was I'd make 75 and I'd spend 85. I need to get the new girl. I need to get this. And if my life would just look this way, I'll be okay. And we all come here with that, right? And that's fool's gold, right? We are all equipped right here in this room at this moment with every single thing that we need to be okay and to be at peace. And like I told you, I didn't know that was the goal. The goal was to get what I want. Right? I mean, if you watch TV for 5 seconds, that's the goal, right? Look at this car, look at her, look at this, that's what America is, a group of consumers, right? And obtainers, and, get the degree, get the body, get the whatever it is that and all those things are good. We have to have goals. That's what that fire that God gave us got us out of the caves, right? And into all the advances that we've made. So all that stuff is fantastic. But the problem is when you have a soul sickness like I have, that stuff replaces, or I think it will replace, what the mission here is, And the mission is peace and to experience God's love. And it took me a long time. And so I'm on this mission to conquer, and I told you I got thrown out of the Navy, took a hostage. We got divorced before our year anniversary. Took Renee hostage a couple days later. The bed was not cold, and we went on a new mission, right? She had this baby girl that I fell in love with first, really, and we just started doing this AA thing and started trying to put a life together, and get a little house, get a little bigger house, get a little job, get a little better job, and get a little, whatever it is, and the American dream. And we've had an AA house the entire time, and but somewhere along the line I got off the path, is what I'm getting at. And I don't, whether it was just the seeking of self, or whether it was that my foundation wasn't completely solid, hindsight's 20/20. Whatever it is, but really slowly, one day at a time, it was just a degree off course, And we've all seen that with some old timers or some mid timers, whatever it is, And the thing is, when you start getting off our course of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's really hard to detect, because I come in here and I sound the same. That's why I have to have intimate relationships with other men. After I'd ruined my life, my sponsor said, "Come on out to this little men's retreat we do." I'd never been to a men's retreat sober, 19, 20 years. I show up in the hills of Tennessee. I'm I'm not a city guy, but I'm a East Coast guy. The banjos are playing off in the background, and I walk in. The first thing this guy says, Burns Brady. 30 men sitting in this room. Beautiful setting. Burns Brady. The first thing he says is, "I love men." I thought, am I at the right retreat? And I don't have a homophobic bone in my body. It's not, And he said, I have a deep need for intimate relationship with other men. And I was just like, oh my God. Like I thought, just tell me the magic definition of something in the book. Tell me, give me the nugget. It was the nugget. And but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. And I just ruined my life in sobriety, just chasing self. I need to shorten this up. In 1 year's period of time of my own making, as the book talks about, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, I had conned this guy in sobriety into selling me a business. The first guy that ever gave me a job in this industry, and I ruined the business. My house was in foreclosure. My cars got repossessed. The IRS had garnished my checking account like 3 or 4 times. I was so full of fear. I had these, those Christmas shopping bags, the big ones, the ones that Katie comes home with. I had 2 next to my office full of so much mail. I could not open it. I mean, if you sat there and made me open it, I'd have done this. I just couldn't do it, I got arrested in sobriety. It was actually the 3rd time, but, and they were all for the same thing. 18 months of sobriety, 5 years of sobriety, and 18 years of sobriety. Maryland's got this silly rule of you can't drive with a suspended driver's license. And I had when it happened at 18 or 19 years, this is the great part. I just finished having dinner with a new guy. And I was giving him the business, But what he needed to do, thank God he didn't drive by, right? He left the parking lot first. Can you imagine that if he had left second? Hey, Spons! Call me tomorrow! And I had, I'm skipping over some stuff, but it was a mess. It was a mess. And I traded in my sword, and my sword that I used to say in meetings, I've done a lot wrong in sobriety, but I've never picked up, I've never been unfaithful to my wife. And I traded that in. I was so spiritually sick that a woman gave me some attention and it was over, And it crushed our family, it crushed our marriage. Nearly killed my wife. I mean, she doesn't have 40 pounds to lose, and she lost them. And on top of that, I had fallen off in efforts of saving this business. I fell off this ladder from, it gets higher every time I describe it, 180 feet, and I broke my arm at 90 degrees like Joe Theismann broke his leg, and broke my pelvis in 3 places, and I'm stuck in this lazy boy chair, just dying. I mean, self-pity that only the alcoholic knows, And, my wife is stuck taking care of this loser in the basement, And, I just don't know how you do that. I couldn't have done that. And she knew that it wasn't her husband that she was taking care of, that it was another suffering alcoholic, If she hadn't been in control of the brief period of time that I had to take pain pills, I don't know if I'd be sitting here. And I'm just dying inside. And finally, after a couple of months of living in a lazy boy chair, I get to, get back to some meetings and start, and I'm just dying, man. Because my wife sponsors half of the town that we live in, Frederick, and like 472 girls. And every time I walk into a meeting, they give me the evil eye. Really. She says that's not true, but it was true to me. And all the guys know I'm a loser, and I'm just, God. And one morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't take it. And I'm crying like a schoolgirl on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m. the way that you only cry when you're by yourself. You know what that looks like, right? It's not pretty, especially when you haven't cried in like 15 years. I mean, it's just coming out of every. Your ears are crying, and I'm like, AA doesn't work. Look at my life. I'm 19 years sober. There's nothing good in my life. I mean, my kids are incredible, and my wife's an incredible person, but like all the circumstances, there's nothing good. AA doesn't work. And I heard that little voice that Katie talked about. It sounded a lot like my very first sponsor. Tell me you're not working the program. And I had this not vision, but I accepted the truth about my participation in Alcoholics Anonymous in the previous year or so. And I couldn't deny it. And because I briefly for a second thought about taking a drink. I knew that wouldn't fix the pain that I was in. And the best thing I could come up with was rifle or shotgun. Well, rifle's no good because that'll go through the ceiling and with my luck will kill one of my kids, and then I'm definitely in hell. And I said the greatest AA prayer that I've ever said since, and maybe ever will, and that was, God, fix me or kill me, just do one of them quick. And I surrendered at a depth and weight that we all have to do at one point or another. Some of us do it at 18 days, and some of us do it at 18 years. And the lesson in that for me was that there is no such thing as 99% surrendered in here. Right? I got to put all the chips in, and I wish I could tell you from that moment on things got beautifully glorious, and that wasn't the case. There was another 90 days of misery probably after that. And I tell you that to say that surrender is not the answer. Surrender is one of the prerequisites. Because I'm still driving around thinking about killing myself after that surrender almost every day. I had to get a cruddy job. They paid me a quarter of what I once made. I had to borrow a car to drive to a concern similar to one I once owned. Any big book readers? I guess not. Oh, okay. And I'm dying, and I just, should I put the car into the embankment, And my wife was working with some silly new girl, and she gave me some silly CD about, doing step work. And I called this guy, and I said, 1,000 miles away. I said, I heard you talk about the 4-step, and I really hadn't done it that way. Will you take me through the work? And he said, well, I don't know about the God of your understanding, but I just got off my knees this morning, and I asked God to send me somebody to help, and I guess you're it. I didn't know he said that prayer every day, but, that was my day. That was my day. I picked 3 number correctly for once. And we went on this journey, I said, great, let's get going on the 4-step. And he said, no, I don't know about that. Typical sponsorship, right? Like, I'm going to call you the problem, I'm going to tell you what the problem is, I'm going to tell you the solution, and then let's get going. And he said, look, we're just going to do everything in the book. I don't know what you missed. You did something right to stay here 19 years, but you missed something. Let's go back through this thing. Let's just follow the instructions. When it says stop and pray, we're going to stop and pray. When it says make a list, we'll make a list. When it says consider, we'll consider. When it says make something right, we'll make it right. If you're in, I'll do that. And I said, I will do whatever it takes. And I went after this thing with a vigor that I'd never had before. Like only the dying will. And, I got the greatest promise that the book has. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. I had moments that my spirit was awoken during the previous 20 years, but self would darken it up again, cover it up again, and that's my job, right? To stop the car, just get in the car, to grab the guy at the back of the meeting. Come on, we're going here. Just get in, not explain everything. We all know Dr. Bob's last talk of love and service. But that's not the best part of that talk. It's powerful, but it's not the best part. The best part is after. He says, none of us would be here if someone hadn't taken the time to explain things to us. Let us guard the erring member of the tongue. I'm so quick to cut somebody out of my life. Oh, she's an idiot. She says something dumb in the group conscience, never talk to her again. She's an idiot, or whatever it is, or just, slowly push them out of my life. And the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous is that whatever it is, whatever mess you bring here can be made peace. And that, in talking about 2 minutes, in talking about amends, I didn't think I could make this right with my wife. And I knew I was signing up for, we decided after a little while, we decided we're going to give this thing a shot and try to build this thing back together, build it to something new. And, I just knew that she was going to beat me with this club the rest of my life. And I knew, those are all dangerous statements, right? I told you, I know, most dangerous statement in AA. But I knew that she wouldn't be able to get over it because her previous marriage had ended the same way. I'm a pretty smart guy. I knew these things. And, but I said, I am going to stay here for a year and I will take whatever beating comes my way. And because I didn't know that she had a spiritual awakening where that first marriage was the past, And I'm here to tell you that, A, we just celebrated 25 years of marriage, but B, more importantly than the numerical aspect of it, is that our marriage is strong and that we are at peace, and that is in the past, but we're not afraid to go back there to share it with others, right? I love what Bill says. Cling to the thought that our dark past is the greatest possession we have. It's not some magic definition of page 32, right? It's our dark past. And how I know that we are at peace about what happened, maybe 2 more minutes, is December I got really sick with COVID. I had the real COVID, not this Omicron, like half COVID. I had the real deal Delta, you're on your way out COVID. Scott and I did a weekend in Buffalo, and they infected me. And I really thought I was dying. I didn't let her know that, but I really thought I was dying. They put the oxygen meter on you, and it's supposed to stay like between 97 and 100 or something like that. And mine was dropping into 85 all the time. I'm laying on the couch at home, and it felt like Jimmy was standing on my chest. I thought it was it. I don't go to doctors. I don't go to the dentist. I don't do that stuff. And my sister is a nurse, and I got some friends, and whatever. The collective group conscious was it was time to go to the hospital. And my friend from work had just died from being on a respirator for 6 weeks. And, the numbers at that time were like, hey, if you're on a respirator, flip the coin. We might not see you again. And she's driving in this hospital, because they weren't allowing people to go in, and she dropped me at the front door. And I knew it had been made right. I said, baby girl, it's been a great 25 years if I don't come out of here. And I knew it. I just knew it in my heart. And it's only because of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, that I'm sitting here today. I love you guys. I owe you my life.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheldon Fady. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Sheldon.
Yeah, I was worried that nobody was going to show up this morning because I know you guys don't have any problems in sobriety in the South. That's just something that happens in. I guess that happens in Maryland. I didn't realize that. I thought that I was going to get sober, and it was going to be wonderful, and there'd be no problems. Right? Like drinking was my problem, so I'm going to get sober, and then, my moral compass is screwed up, and you're going to fix it, and then everything's going to be wonderful, and I'm going to ride the rocket ship into harmony and beauty, and that was what I expected sobriety to be. I actually got pretty lucky. The first bunch of years of my sobriety were like that. I got sober. I met a girl. She was way prettier than any girl I should ever be with. We had a kid. He was healthy. I got promoted at my job. We got a nice big fancy house, members of a nice big fancy home group. And I thought that because I was doing AA right, I had no problems. And when you had problems, I would stand off to the side in the meeting and I'd pull someone aside and go, well, it's because he's not doing inventory right. If he would just inventory more, he's not working with enough newcomers. That's what the problem is, right? It's when he talks at the meetings, he's just not honest enough, he's cheating on his taxes, beating his dog, sleeping with his neighbor, stealing from his boss. He must be doing something wrong, because if he was doing AA right, his life would be wonderful, like mine. And it's not surprising I behave that way, right? Because I bet my life on this idea that if I live by spiritual principles, or if I am a good enough member of AA, then everything's going to be amazing, right? It's the funniest thing we do. And I do this, right? And every time I do it, I think, God, I'm an idiot. I will say in one breath that we are powerless over alcohol. And I will tell you what that means, the depths of the powerlessness of my disease. And then when somebody drinks, I have to come up with a reason it's their fault. Right? I have to judge their program and come up with, right? What's true in my life, and not in your life, because you're good people, but what's true in my life is there have been many things that I have done that had I drank, you would be able to say that's why. But I didn't drink, right? But I didn't drink. Wilson says, the certain trials and low spots ahead. Not the trials and low spots ahead. The certain trials ahead. If you're not in a trial or low spot, don't worry. Because I'm certain that you got one coming, baby. But it also says that we can survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. It's been an interesting couple of years. Not every crisis that I have been through, and I've been through a couple, has been self-imposed, but plenty of them have. I'm guilty. I'll just kind of lay out the last 4 years for you. Like, it's funny listening to John, because I tell you the similarities are scary. 2017, I opened a business with a partner that I had no business opening. 2 months after we opened the business, the deal was he put in the money, I put in the work. 2 months after we opened the business, he took out all the money. I woke up one day, checked the bank account's empty. He was scared. I understand. But it's a car dealership and it requires money to operate. There's payroll and rent and expenses, and it's a big. I was scared. I called my sponsor and he said, I just go to work as if the money was in the bank. See what God does with it. That's okay. I can deal with one thing. I'm in a marriage that to a good woman that never did anything wrong. We were married 20 years. But after about 10 years, we became roommates. And I would have lived like that. I wasn't happy, but I would have lived like that. But, the girl that understood came along and smiled, and I did it. If you'd have asked me 2 days before if that was possible, I would have said, no way. Not with my program, boy. There is no shot but I tell you, it was possible. And I was a willing participant, and I did that. And then we got divorced. We didn't survive. You guys survived that. A business that I operate, it's a retail business. You have to have the ability to drive in the building, and they did some construction at a level that, like, whatever you're imagining, it was more. They closed the street. It's a main street. Business is getting really difficult. And then this COVID thing comes along, right? And we're all dealing with that. And they close me down. And then I'm on my way to work. We're closed, but I'm meeting a guy by appointment. We're all kind of just trying to do the best we can, and I'm on my way to meet this guy, and I'm driving, and I have a stroke. And then the stroke causes a seizure. And in the seizure, my L4 vertebrae explodes. And it was a pretty tough day, to be honest. I'm laying in the hospital, and they don't know why they won't operate on my back because they're afraid I'll have another stroke or another seizure, and they're telling me if you sneeze wrong, you're going to be paralyzed, and I'm scared. I'm 24 years sober, 23, 24 years sober. And I don't know what happened. I'll go back to when I first got sober for a minute. I'm at this meeting at my sponsor's house. I'm stood outside the meeting, and there's a group of us talking. This kid, John, I never forget this kid. He's not sober. This kid, John, he was new like me, and he asked me this question in a real cocky way. Just kind of came at me. And when he asked me, I just started to cry. And it wasn't that deep of a question. He just says to me, he goes, "What do you want from AA?" And it hit me because I'd been going in and out for 3 or 4 years that I didn't know, right? I didn't know. But I think back to what was going through my head when he asked me that question. I think if I could have answered, I think what I would have said is, I want to know that AA works. That's what I want to know. I want to know that AA works. What does that mean? That means that I will be able to successfully not drink one day at a time and be comfortable in my own skin doing it. Not sentenced to sobriety, not painfully sober, but that I will be able to comfortably, happily remain sober throughout the rest of my life, one day at a time, regardless of what comes my way. That's what I would like. I would like to know that AA works. And if AA works, if it does work, what that's going to mean, it's going to mean that God has to be real. Right? Because that's the only way I'm going to be able to stay sober one day at a time, relatively comfortable in my skin, no matter what comes down the pike. So what do I want, AA? What do I want to know? What do I want? I want to know that AA is real, that it works, and that because AA is real and it works, that means that God's real, and I'll be able to connect to Him. That's what I would have told this kid. I'm laying in that bed. 23 years later. I'm scared. My biggest fear is that I'm going to move wrong. There was so much stenosis. My spine literally exploded, and they couldn't believe that I was able to walk. I was on a walker shuffling around, and it was amazing that with that injury, my spinal cord wasn't severed. My biggest fear was that I was going to move wrong, and I was going to sever my spinal cord. Now, I was not afraid of being in a wheelchair, because I'm lazy, and there was a little attractiveness, right? I mean, but part of me was like, you know.
As long as everything works.
But what I couldn't figure out is how, and forgive me, I don't mean to offend the people that have friends and family in wheelchairs when I say this. It was my fear, right? Was that I didn't know how I was going to wipe my bum. That was like, oh my God, I'm going to be in, I'm laying in this bed. John mentioned being on pain pills. I used to be a guy who said, alcoholics can't do opiates no matter what. Let me tell you something. And no matter what is if your alpha vertebrae explodes. That's no matter what. All that means is you're not hurt enough, tough guy. That's all that means. Well, I had my tooth pulled. Well, good for you. Right? But I was on opiates for a few months, and I'm scared of that too. Right? Because people die when they do. I have alcoholism. I had 2 diseases. Right? I could not ignore my alcoholism, right, and be completely pain-free. And I couldn't ignore my pain, right? I had to navigate, but I'm scared. I'm recently divorced. The divorce was public and humiliating. You guys built a pedestal under me. I helped you. And then when I fell off it was painful. I'm laying in this bed. No, I go into prayer and meditation, and the weirdest thing happened. It was indigo blue. The feeling that started at my toes, I could see it. And it was warm. And it made me relax. And it rose up over my knees, to my waist and my torso and my shoulders. And if you've never had this powerful of a spiritual experience, you probably will. Right? I've had a couple in my life. They're rare. It was amazing. It tasted like purple. Isn't that weird? Right? And I just was like, and then it was gone. Not really gone, because it's still here now, right? Because as I talk about it, the feeling comes back, but then it was gone. A friend of mine that I sponsor was kind of pushing me to explain, like, what did that feel like? What are you trying to say? And I tell you what it felt like. It felt like I knew that I was going to be okay. I didn't know how I was going to wipe my bum. But I knew I was going to be okay. Here's what I knew. I knew that AA worked. I knew that regardless of what happened with my health, regardless of what happened with my business, regardless of what happened in my romantic life, regardless of what happened with my position in my home group, I knew I was going to be okay. Because I knew that AA worked. I knew that AA worked when you got a divorce. I knew it worked when your business was in trouble. I knew it worked when you had health problems. I knew it worked when we had COVID. And this wasn't a new lesson. My ex-wife and I have one son. She was pregnant 4 times. We saw 4 heartbeats, 1 son. That's 3 really bad days. And it worked then. It worked when my dad died. It worked when my mom was sick. It worked when I'd had other business issues. It worked. I knew it worked, and I knew that I was comfortable in my skin most of the time. I knew that even with the pain and pressure and angst and problems and the fear and the insecurity and all these weird emotions that I have, all this angst, I knew that even with that I was able to breathe and that AA worked and I was comfortable in my skin most of the time. And what did that mean? That meant that for this mixed up, muddled up guy, that God was real. God was real. AA works, and God is real. And my life is an imperfect mess. A beautiful, fabulous, wonderful, tasty, exciting, I giggle a lot, mess. Some people. Here's what I have come to the podium in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been honored and blessed to be invited to do this for about 15 years. And for the first 7, I wanted you to know that I was the most perfect member of Alcoholics Anonymous with the greatest program ever, and that really, honestly, if you just would touch the hem of my robe, you could be wonderful too. I did. It was very important to me. Right? And it nearly killed me. And what I want you to know is that I've made every mistake that you have ever made, and I'm making some of them now. I talked to some friends this weekend. I'm making some mistakes right now that today is going to make a great story. I'm not ready to tell it yet, but trust me. When I'm 3 years from now, when I'm ready, boy, you're going to go, holy shit, but he seemed to hold it so well together. Right, Jack? I mean, holy shamoli, right? This is not a competition about who can look the best, sound the best, appear the best, hide it the best, come to the table the best with the most spiritual nugget, right? It's not what this is. I want to live my life publicly, transparently, and wholly in front of you so I can feel some semblance of connection, and hopefully you can too. Right? I want to find a way to get as close. See, here's the thing, right? I'm scared too. Right? And I'm also pretending not to be scared in a room full of people I have nothing to be afraid of. Me too. Right? Me too. And that's where God lives. Not in the I know, I'm better, I can dot the I's, I can cry, but I'm scared too. Let's all just breathe together for God's sakes, right? Let's just get through it's going to be okay. You know why? Because AA works. And God is real. And that's why it's going to be okay. Because we can sit naked and afraid together. And we can breathe and we can tell each other the truth, and it's going to be okay. I was in Florida 10 years ago. Fort Lauderdale. And I don't know if it's always like this down there, but this is what it was like down there. There was some sand dunes out in the ocean, right? And the tide had gone out. Because of these little sand dunes, you couldn't see. Like the tide went out a long way, and then the water's behind, and it looked like you were staring at the Sahara Desert, right? You couldn't see the water. Could not see the water. When I looked out there, I did not think for 1 minute that somebody had pulled the plug on the Atlantic Ocean. Well, that's weird. It's the Atlantic Desert now. Somebody get me a camel. I'm going exploring. Not what I thought. I thought, wow, that's kind of freaky. I wonder not if, but when the tide is coming back in. Because I know it is. And sometimes I stand at the side of the ocean, and the kiss of God's love is on my teeth. On my toes, I mean. And I am barely connected. Barely connected. Living in self-will. Right? Don't you love it when we talk in AA like, well, I used to live in self-will, and now I got it, though. That was close, but now I'm going to be wonderful forever. Good for you. Good for you. Not my story. I'm probably going to get pissed off at someone at the airport on the way home, just so you know. I'm certainly going to complain about the price of bottled water. It's going to shock me. Right? I've been flying for decades, but the price of bottled water, I'm going to, look at the thieves, right? Look at these people, daylight robber. I'm going to complain about it, for God's sake, right? Sometimes I'm stood at the edge of it's licking my toes, right? And I'm a little connected to God. Other times it's over my head and I'm swimming in the Spirit, right? And I'm feeling, like this moment, I'm feeling it. I'm lit up. Other times it's in between. But what I got to remember is when the tide is out, nobody pulled the plug on the Atlantic Ocean. My connection to God, my connection to you, my ability to work in AA program, all of it is tidal. It comes and it goes. And I think I do better when I don't pretend it's always in when it's not in. And I don't be afraid that it's always going to be out when it's out. That I let the cycle of life and I let the wind blow and the breezes go and the tide flow, and I just, as long as I remember this, AA works and God is real. AA works. It works in rough going. It works. And God is real. Thank you for my life.